The Blood Moon Coven. Elara was a young woman who lived in a big old house with her family. Her family wanted her to marry a man she did not like. She was very unhappy about this. One night, she decided to run away. She took only a small bag and left her house quickly. She walked for a long time until she found a small village hidden in the woods. The village looked calm and peaceful. The villagers were kind and gave Elara a warm place to stay. They told her that they were very good at using herbs to heal people. Elara was happy to be away from her family and hoped she could find a new life in this village. One day, while Elara was walking in the village, she saw something strange. There were old symbols painted on the trees and rocks. She didn't know what they meant, but they looked mysterious. That night, Elara heard strange noises coming from the forest. It sounded like people were talking in low voices. She tried to look, but the forest was too dark. She felt a little scared, but tried not to think too much about it. The next morning, an old woman in the village told Elara about the blood moon. The woman said it was a special time when the moon turns red. She also mentioned that people in the village did special ceremonies during the blood moon. Elara thought this was odd, but tried to ignore it. She was still happy to be safe in the village and hoped her old life would stay far away. As days went by, Elara started noticing more strange things in the village. One evening, she saw villagers gathering in a circle in the woods. They were talking quietly and holding hands. Elara wanted to ask them what they were doing, but they looked serious and did not invite her. She felt a little uneasy, but tried to forget about it. Elara also noticed that some villagers had odd illnesses. They would talk about seeing things or feeling very tired, but the herbs from the village did not help them much. Elara wondered why the remedies did not work. Another time, Elara found a strange symbol carved into the door of her house. It was a drawing of a moon with red marks around it. She asked the villagers about it, but they just smiled and said it was a special symbol for protection. Elara began to feel like something was not right. She saw these signs often, and they made her nervous. But she still wanted to believe that the village was just different and that nothing bad was going to happen. Elara felt worried but tried to ignore her fears. The villagers were kind to her, and she wanted to believe that everything was okay. One day, Elara met a young woman named Lila. Lila was friendly and said, "Don't worry about the symbols and ceremonies. It's just how we celebrate the blood moon. It's a tradition." Elara wanted to believe Lila. She thought, maybe I am just imagining things. The villagers seem nice. Elara also noticed that her own sleep was not good. She had bad dreams and sometimes saw shadows moving in the dark. She felt tired, but tried to tell herself it was just stress from leaving her old life. She tried to focus on her new life. She helped in the village garden and made friends with some of the villagers. They seemed happy and were always smiling. Elara thought, maybe I am just being paranoid. They are good people. Despite her feelings, Elara kept her worries to herself. She hoped that by staying busy and being friendly, everything would turn out fine. As days passed, Elara's worries started to grow. She began to feel sick and weak. Her body ached, and she had headaches that wouldn't go away. At night, Elara's dreams became very strange. She saw scary images of red moons and shadows chasing her. When she woke up, she felt scared and couldn't sleep well. The dark seemed darker, and every little sound made her jump. Her hands started shaking sometimes, and she felt like she was seeing things that weren't there. One evening, she saw a shadow move in her room, but when she looked again, it was gone. Elara tried to talk to the villagers about her problems. They told her it was normal to feel unwell when moving to a new place. You were just adjusting, they said, but Elara wasn't sure. She thought maybe it's more than just stress. She tried to keep going, but the symptoms made it hard to focus. Every day felt harder, and she became more worried about what was happening to her. Elara's health kept getting worse. She felt more and more alone in the village. Her friends started to avoid her. They seemed worried about her and whispered behind her back. One day, Elara tried to join a village gathering, but the villagers looked at her strangely and asked her to leave. They said, "It is not the right time for you to join us." Elara felt very sad and scared. She felt like she didn't belong. Her fears grew stronger. She was scared to go outside after dark because she thought she might see the shadows from her nightmares. The village that once seemed safe now felt like a prison. She wanted to leave but found that she couldn't. The path out of the village was always blocked by thick fog or strange animals. It seemed like something was stopping her from leaving. Elara's fear made it hard for her to think clearly. She began to feel like the village was closing in on her. She thought, is there no way out? Why is everyone acting so strange? Every day, she felt more alone and trapped. The village that once felt like a refuge now felt like a nightmare. Elara's fear and isolation became too much to handle. She knew she had to do something to get out of the village. She was desperate for answers and a way to escape. One night, when the villagers were having a ceremony in the woods, Elara decided to follow them. She hid behind trees and watched them closely. She saw them dancing around a large red symbol on the ground and chanting strange words. Elara was very scared but took a deep breath. She quietly went back to her house and searched for anything that might help her understand what was happening. She found old books and notes that talked about the blood moon and the village's secret ceremonies. She learned that the villagers believed in a powerful spirit that demanded a sacrifice during the blood moon. Elara realized that she was the one they wanted for the ritual. Determined to escape, Elara made a plan. She gathered some supplies and decided to leave the village in the middle of the night. She knew it would be dangerous, but she felt she had no other choice. That night, as the villagers were busy with their ceremony, Elara sneaked out of her house. She followed a path she had never taken before, hoping it would lead her to freedom. Elara sneaked through the dark forest, following the path she hoped would lead her out of the village. As she walked, she noticed the fog was getting thicker, and she felt her way along the trees. After a while, she came across a small, hidden building. It was old and covered with vines. She carefully went inside and found a room full of old books and strange objects. Elara looked through the books and found a journal with a red cover. It was written by someone who had lived in the village a long time ago. The journal talked about the blood moon and how the villagers made sacrifices to their dark spirit. It said that the spirit gave them power in exchange for blood. Elara realized that the villagers were not just celebrating. They were preparing for a big ritual to make the spirit stronger. The journal also mentioned that to stop the ritual, someone had to break the red symbol used in the ceremony. Feeling more determined, Elara knew she had to do something. She took the journal and left the hidden building. Making her way back to the village, she planned to find the red symbol and destroy it to stop the ritual and save herself. The night of the blood moon arrived. The village was busy with preparations for the big ceremony. Elara knew this was her chance to stop them. She found the red symbol in the woods, just like in the journal. It was drawn on the ground in a large circle. Elara was scared but determined. She had to destroy it. Elara picked up a stick and tried to erase the symbol. but just then, she heard the villagers coming. They were singing and chanting as they walked toward the symbol. Elara hid behind a tree and watched. The villagers gathered around the symbol and began their ritual. They seemed to be preparing for something very important. One of the villagers, Lila, noticed Elara hiding. She came over and said, "What are you doing here? You are not supposed to see this." Elara felt a rush of fear, but stood her ground. She said, "I know what you are doing. I will stop this." Lila looked angry and said, "You don't understand. The spirit needs this to give us power. You can't stop it." Elara quickly grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it on the symbol, trying to cover it up. The villagers tried to stop her, but she pushed them away and kept working. As she worked, the sky turned darker and the red moon shone brightly. Elara felt the ground shake. She knew she had to finish quickly. Finally, the symbol was covered. The villagers looked shocked and confused. The ceremony stopped, and the villagers began to leave. Elara was exhausted, but relieved. She had stopped the ritual, but she knew she still needed to leave the village quickly. After Elara stopped the ritual by covering the red symbol, the villagers were very angry. They looked at her with fear and anger. Lila said, "You have ruined everything. You must pay for this." Elara knew she had to act fast. She ran to the edge of the village. But the fog and darkness made it hard to see. The villagers followed her, shouting and trying to catch her. Elara found a small path that led out of the village, but it was blocked by thick branches and vines. She tried to push them aside, but they were too strong. In the chaos, Elara saw the village elder, a wise and old woman. The elder came to her and said, "You have stopped the ritual, but now you must choose. Either you join us and become part of our group, or you will be lost forever in the fog." Elara was shocked. She didn't want to join them, but she also didn't want to be lost in the fog. She thought about her old life and how she had escaped her forced marriage. She felt trapped between two terrible choices. The elder continued, "Joining us will make you one of us, and you will be safe. But you will never leave the village. Or you can refuse and be lost in the fog, where no one will find you." Elara made a hard choice. She decided to refuse to join the coven. She knew that staying with them meant losing her freedom forever. But she also knew that being lost in the fog meant she might never escape. She took a deep breath and said, "I choose to stay free, even if it means facing the unknown." The elder nodded sadly and told Elara, "Then you must go quickly. The fog will soon close in." Elara ran through the fog, her heart pounding. She hoped to find a way out and escape the village forever. Elara ran through the thick fog, her heart beating fast. She could barely see and felt very afraid. The fog was heavy and seemed to press down on her. She kept running, hoping to find a way out of the village. The fog seemed endless, but she pushed on, thinking about her old life and the freedom she wanted. Finally, after what felt like hours, Elara saw a small light in the distance. She ran toward it with all her strength. As she got closer, the fog began to clear. Elara found herself at the edge of the forest, and the village was far behind her. The light was from a road that led to a bigger town. She was free at last. Elara was exhausted, but very happy. She knew she would never return to the village. She had escaped the Blood Moon Coven and found her way to safety. As she walked down the road, she felt a sense of relief and hope. She knew that her life would be different now, but she was ready to start a new chapter, far away from the dark secrets of the village.